Chris, thank you so much for being with us. Chris is the president and CEO of Command Education, which, according to People magazine, just in 2019, it said is the nation's leader in college admissions. He was named Forbes 30 Under 30, People magazine's Heroes Amongst Us. He was President Obama's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. He's on multiple advisory boards, including Lady Gaga's Born This Way Foundation. He earned a bachelor's from Yale University and studied psychology, focusing on emotional intelligence. And he's a continued senior contributor for Forbes. So I feel like I am amongst celebrity right now. Thank you so much for being with us, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. I think it's really important that people, parents, teachers, educators, hear your perspective on what's going on in college admissions right now. So first question is, how will extracurriculars be interrupted, and what can students do about this right now?
Yeah, so I think we're kind of seeing this across the board with all students, not just students in the US, but students internationally. Because school is closed, obviously you're not participating in any school tournaments, whether it's athletics or musicals that you might be in, or maybe it's a debate team. So we have students who were prepping for the entire year or even a year and a half for their state championship, and now all of that is canceled. So I don't really necessarily think students will be penalized for that. So there's not much to worry about.
So during this time, what do you think students should be doing?
Yeah, I think really in order to maximize this time, students should start thinking about how they can have an impact in their own community. I think that's going to be one of the most important things, because a lot of the students I work with start their own 501c3 nonprofits or even companies that do incredibly well. I have students who have social media accounts for their projects with 300,000 followers, for example, or YouTube accounts that have 40,000 subscribers, and they just started it 2 months ago because we help them build engaging content. We are able to guide them. So I think students should really take advantage of this time, if they're able to really think about what they might be interested in, what do they want to do but didn't have time to do before, and build it into a passion project, because this is what's going to help you stand out for the college process. And you'll also learn so many valuable skills throughout this journey.
So a lot of students right now are honestly freaking out because this is the first time that I think in my lifetime I can kind of remember SATs, ACTs, standardized tests of APs just being canceled or changed, taking them at home. And so what does this mean for your students, or what kind of advice are you giving?
Yeah, I would say even though these schools, like for example, just earlier this week, Northeastern said that they're going test optional now. And a few weeks ago, it was MIT, Boston University, and there's Northeastern. So there's all these different schools. They're now becoming test optional. But I would say that just because a school is test optional doesn't mean you don't take the test. If they refuse to take the tests and to accept the test scores, that's a whole other thing. But for example, MIT became test optional, and really for their subject tests, for the SAT subject tests. Mm-hmm. So they're not even going to consider your scores. But all the other schools I mentioned, like Boston University, Northeastern, Tufts, those schools are still going to accept them. So let's say if there are 2 students or 3 students at the same school, very similar grade point average, very similar extracurriculars and summer activities, but one student did take the SATs and did fairly well, near perfect or perfect scores across the board, including subject tests. Which student will the admissions officers really want to take? I think they're going to lean towards that student who did take the test, because they're just more confident that that student has the ability to succeed once he or she gets to the college campus.
So I'm actually going to, if you allow me, I would like to ask a couple more questions.
Sure.
A lot of students are so disheartened because, as you know, they weren't able to go back to campus, whether it be for graduation, and they may be nervous about getting a job or an internship over the summer, which you had mentioned. And for instance, I have an athlete in my family who plays a spring sport. He's a baseball player, and it's I think devastated him because he looks forward to the spring season, and that's been completely wiped out. And he's also a sports fan, and he has no sports to watch. So what are you saying to those students who may have depended on some kind of an extracurricular that really was only going to take place in the spring, or they needed to take a class that was in the spring, or they needed to work somewhere, or what do you say to those students whose that opportunity has just been wiped out?
I think they're going to figure out a way to accommodate in order to really make this as fair as possible. But
Sure.
I'm confident, even if we don't have the right answers now, because things are changing almost on a daily basis, as we start to get more clarity around the situation, we'll have a fair way to assess this and make sure that all those students who really depended on the spring season get the fair chance to showcase their talents and their abilities.
I like what you said, and I'll pull back to what you said. So this time really is a good opportunity to have that passion project and maybe apply those special interests to whatever that passion project could possibly be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah.
final question. I want to leave anybody who's watching this with some optimism and hope. Something new. Can you share with us something that you've discovered or something that you can project as being any kind of knowledge?
Yeah, I think going back to these standardized tests, I think schools and colleges will start to understand that these standardized tests are not a true indication of how smart a student is. I mean, these exams are fully coachable. If you have the resources, if you have the time to really practice and study for these exams on a daily basis, you can get that perfect score, whether it's on the subject test or the ACT. But not all students have that privilege of being able to afford the right tutor or being able to spend 2-3 hours on a daily basis or even on the weekends if they have to go support their families with a part-time job or something. So I think schools will start to understand that these tests are not really that useful for the admissions process. And I think schools are going to start focusing more and more on what the students did to really have an impact in their own community, who they really are, what are their personalities like, what kind of morals do they have. So I think that's pretty much, I think, the silver lining and really the benefit that's going to come out of this entire process. Because these tests, as you can already see, like the UC schools, for example, are now removing these testing requirements as well. And I feel like they're not going to go back. I truly feel like a lot of these schools, once they go test optional, they're really going to stick that way because they're going to get the same caliber of students. They're going to get these incredible students who will really have a huge impact on the college campus once they get there. And they'll see that firsthand with the students applying this fall.
I love that. So it's an opportunity to reframe and reform education in the way that would be more meritocratic, really.
Exactly. Yep.
That's fantastic. So, Chris, thank you so much for your time. Let's definitely stay in touch. And if there are any follow-up questions, I hope I can invite you back.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.